Hey guys, oh, I look so small. Hey guys, welcome to Shino's Arsenal. We're going to be going over the most recent Arsenal news and transfer news. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. Before we really get into it, I just want to apologize for not being able to do the show yesterday for the preseason review. I'm having huge camera issues. This is the usual camera that I use. It's a Canon camera. And lately, it's been giving me the absolute blues. It won't turn on. Sometimes it turns on, sometimes it doesn't. And so sometimes I try to start shows and the camera just doesn't come on. And it's the most frustrating thing. So I have to get it fixed and figure out what's going on with that. But yeah, and I was going to do the preseason review today at 1:30. But then the news about David Raya came out. So we're going to go ahead and go over that now. And then later on today, we will do a preseason review because I do think we have to have a little, chill out sesh and kind of talk about how we felt about how all of that went down. So make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Get in the chat and let me know how you guys are feeling. Early days, early doors. You guys are in here. There's 80 of you guys in here, so make sure you guys are in the chat and letting me know how you guys feel. But as you guys can see, David Raya, Arsenal had put in a bid for David Raya, I think yesterday, and Fabrizio Romano reported it, saying that it was 20 million base fee with 3 million in add-ons. And I was like, that's probably the perfect place to start. Because if you guys remember at the beginning of the transfer window, David Raya was subject of several teams being interested in him. One in particular being Spurs, who were being consistently quoted 40 million. That's what Brentford wanted. They wanted the 40 million. They really wanted it. Raya seemed interested in going to Tottenham as well. And the deal never manifested because Spurs didn't want to pay the 40 million. They didn't want to get anywhere near that fee. So they walked away and ended up getting somebody else. And then Bayern Munich came in and offered a loan for David Raya, which I thought was a little strange, but it looked like he could potentially go there. And then when that fell through, Arsenal swooped in. And so starting bidding around 20 million pounds for David Raya, 20 million pounds with 3 million in add-ons is really good, because what David Ornstein is saying is that Brentford are expected to turn down the opening Arsenal bid for David Raya, but the proposal is only slightly below what Brentford are seeking, and talks continue. Both parties want the deal for the 27-year-old goalkeeper to happen, are now working on the finer details. So this is it could get done for 25 million, really, somewhere between 25 million and 30. But for Spurs to be getting quoted 40 million at the beginning of the transfer window, for us to be able to snag this goalkeeper for anything less than 30, I think, especially when they were asking for the 40, is just crazy. That's such a good market opportunity, I think, for Arsenal. And I think this is mostly what this ends up being, is a market opportunity to bring in a goalkeeper that Mikel Arteta and the goalkeeper coach are very fond of, and also upping the quality of our goalkeepers, because every game matters, and we're going to be playing in multiple competitions, being expected to go far in those competitions, and there's a very small room for error. It's all about fine margins. And so if Raya ends up being the difference between us going out a little bit earlier in a cup or not, or if Ramsdale were to get injured, for us to be able to bring him in, I think that really helps. Because no offense to Matt Turner, you guys know I'm a fan of Matt Turner. I do think that there was questions around whether or not he gave us the comfy feeling of okay, if he comes in, we're in good hands. And I thought he did improve as he got going with Arsenal, but ultimately, David Raya is a much better goalkeeper than Matt Turner. And depending on what side you sit on, he may be a better goalkeeper than Aaron Ramsdale as well. So I think that's an interesting wrinkle to Arsenal's, transfer window. But adding on to this, which again goes back to me saying that this is probably a market opportunity, is Matt Turner is also looking to go to Nottingham Forest. So Fabrizio Romano retweeted a tweet that he made. It was just a couple of minutes ago, that Nottingham Forest have submitted an opening official bid for Matt Turner. Understand the proposal has been made for a permanent transfer. Talks advancing with Arsenal. Crucial step in goalkeepers domino as Arsenal keep negotiating with Brentford for David Raya. Deal getting closer. I am very interested to find out what the fee is going to be for Matt Turner, because we we paid about 6 million. We paid about 6 million for Matt Turner. And if we could make, if we could get 15 million for him, I think that that's a good deal, considering, it was pretty much zero risk as far as I'm concerned. So I think this is potentially a really good deal for Arsenal to really up the quality of the squad again. And I'm sure we'll have many, many conversations around whether or not this is just friendly goalkeeper competition or a slow phase out of a goalkeeper. But in the short term, I mean, it just looks like Arsenal are very serious about making sure that they have the necessary depth and quality in the team to really push for silverware this season. Let's see what you guys are saying. Haman says, a good market opportunity plus homegrown as well. 25 plus add-ons should do it. I agree. Bicavelli says, will definitely help us in cup games and as a spot competition for Aaron. I agree. Carl says, Arteta always talking about those market opportunities. I love a good market opportunity. I think um, sometimes just things kind of fall in your lap in a certain way. You have to take advantage of it. And in another universe, I think we end up trying to go for Robert Sanchez instead. But because Bayern Munich are broke, we have the opportunity to bring in a better goalkeeper in David Raya, which is great. Somebody that we were heavily linked to first before we even went for Aaron Ramsdale. He was our number one choice. Number one choice of the goalkeeper coach and Mikel Arteta. And so for it to come around full circle like this, I think is not to be corny or cringe, but kind of beautiful in a way. Lucas says, I don't understand why Chelsea didn't go for him. I don't know. They preferred Sanchez, and, maybe they didn't get a green light, or maybe they put feelers out, and, I don't know. I don't know why but I think early on in the talks around David Raya, Inaki Kanya was spoken about quite a bit, our goalkeeper coach, and I think he's kind of a big reason why David Raya wants to come to Arsenal. Not saying that he wouldn't go to Chelsea, but I'm just saying, like, everything has kind of just come together where this makes a lot of sense for him to come to us versus anyone else. Jaden says, looks like we'll be playing Turner the first game of the season. I didn't even think of that. And the revenge tour for goalkeepers that leave Arsenal is usually pretty crazy, right? I mean, I think, but then I don't know, like, let's think. The first time that we played against Martinez, I do think that he made a couple of good saves, but also made some mistakes. And Bern Leno, I think, quite similarly as well, at home, but then we still ended up winning. So, and Matt Turner is not leaving under any sort of cloud either, any sort of like animosity. I think what we've done with Trusty and Turner will be applied many more times. Moving forward, basically bringing in players from other leagues, maybe the MLS, upping their profile, and they could get big moves to Premier League clubs, where they wouldn't have got them straight from the MLS. And they end up being players that we loan out or are just a part of our squad, and just them getting more eyes on them and being a part of Arsenal Football Club give them that profile that makes other teams be like, oh, maybe we'll give this guy a try. And so and Arsenal get to sell these players on for profit. I think it's a really good opportunity for everybody. And I think it works in the other direction as well. Arsenal having American players in their team, I think also looks good from the America being such a big market for Arsenal. So yeah, I think everything just kind of works out that way. Nashville says, if we sign Raya, Ramsdale will be out the door next year. He is the guy Arteta has wanted since the start. It's interesting. I do think that, like, my gut feeling says that, there could only be one main goalkeeper. That's how that's the standard. That's how it's always been. Even, most teams that try it for a year, and then one guy moves on. And Aaron is a number one goalkeeper. He's not a backup, and neither is Raya. And so even though there's plenty of games to go around, ultimately, like, the number one goalkeeper is gonna wanna play. So, but let's just think about this a little bit. And for people that don't love hypotheticals, this probably is the time where you're not gonna love the show as much, but I do implore you to stay around just a little bit longer. Um, if, you know, Ramsdale was to leave next summer, we would be able to sell him for a crazy amount of money. He's English. He will be coming into his prime. Um, you know, he will have been playing for Arsenal. I think, we would be able to sell him for a profit as well. Somebody was funnily like on Twitter trying to tell me that we bought Aaron Ramsdale for 40 million pounds. And I was like, it's amazing what rivals will say just to get one over on you or try to make it seem like you've done something that you haven't. We never bought Aaron Ramsdale for 40 million pounds. We bought him for 24 million pounds. I know, because I checked, and so a goalkeeper of Aaron's, level and coming into his prime and being English, you could sell him to a West Ham or, you know, a Brentford or another, a club like that for 40, 45 million, so looking long term, if Aaron were to leave, I do think we'd still be in a good position. I don't want him to go, and I'm kind of not willing to really you know, go into that too much because it's early days, and Raya hasn't even signed, but ultimately you have one number one goalkeeper. That's how it goes, you know. Aman says Raya is better than signing third choice keeper Sanchez. Yeah, man. Like, I think, yeah, I put a little bit extra mustard on that one. I know he's not necessarily the third choice, but what I will say is he was not their number one choice halfway through the season. And so, yeah, I don't know why that would be like a contentious conversation anyway. Everybody, whether you're a Chelsea fan or an Arsenal fan, if you had the two players in front of you, you would choose Raya, I think 10 times over. Ash, thank you so much for your super chat. Says Raya for Matt Turner net spend is 10 to 15 million. Great business. I agree. I definitely agree. Let's see. Ash says it's reported to be 13 million just according to In the Nose. And yeah, I was thinking something around 15 million. Definitely not close to 20, something closer to 15. So 13 makes sense. You make a profit. More players will want to come to Arsenal if they feel like they can improve their levels, even if they don't end up being long-term for Arsenal, but they get big moves to the Premier League. I think it's a really good move for Arsenal to continue to do these things. Let's see. Kai says, am I the only one of the few that still have access to the original Twitter? On my phone, I still have regular Twitter. On my computer, obviously, computer desktop is X, but I don't think I'll ever call it X. I don't foresee myself calling it X ever, so it'll forever in my mind be Twitter, as it should. There's 220 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Orlu says, Raya is a good signing, but we are focusing on the wrong position. Rice is average, and we need Saka backup. So we need an 8 and a right winger. Kudus can do both. If you've watched the last couple of games, first of all, Rice has only played in 2 games for Arsenal so far. A whopping total of probably about just over 90 minutes played for Arsenal Football Club in preseason, recovering from an injury. If you've made a conclusion about Declan Rice at this point, then that's on you. But to write him off so quickly and to say he's average because in 90 minutes while he's carrying an injury, he hasn't looked dazzling to you is wild. But I still feel like Arsenal fans are still not quite getting it that we've addressed left center mid. Like, we've addressed it in multiple ways. You have Declan Rice, who's come in, that we spent 100 million pounds on. And so he can play there, as well as Kai Havertz, who we spent 65 million pounds on. So despite fans not being totally enamored with the options that we have, that doesn't mean that the club haven't already addressed it. So I think we could just put left 8 to bed. We've done it. It's there. We have players that we need to invest more time into that we've already spent money on or invested time into in the past. Like, we have enough players to cover that position. And anybody that's written off Rice so early, I think, I don't know what to tell you. I feel like that's very, it's been like maybe 90 minutes that he's played for Arsenal. Um, and in terms of, right wing, just because you address your goalkeeper situation because Matt Turner is leaving doesn't necessarily mean that you're focusing on another position that Arsenal can walk and chew gum at the same time. Um, we were actively looking at Rice and trying to get the Rice deal done while getting the Timber deal done. So it wasn't like they were neglecting another position. You know what I mean? Like, just because they're figuring out the goalkeeper situation, which is important if Matt Turner is going to leave, doesn't mean that means that they're not focusing on right wing at all. But I respect your opinion, but at the same time, it's just kind of like a lot of kind of like, I do feel like people are overreacting around Rice, to be honest. It's weird. Tope says, let's be honest, Raya will eventually be the number one, and Aki Kanya, the goalkeeping coach, is very fond of Raya, and he was targeted first by Arteta, but Brentford were not willing to sell. I think a lot of people feel that way. Eric says Raya is coming to replace Ramsdale. Not kidding. I think a lot of people say that. Aha says we have 34 players in the squad. If 3 goalkeepers leave, there are 5, along with Holding, Cedric, Tavares, Lakanga, Marquinhos, Balogun, Pepe. That brings it down to 24 players. Then add Raya, maybe Kudus. Yeah, like, we have so many players in the squad. It's like the Raya goes and then or Matt Turner goes, Raya comes in, like one in, one out, because like we just have so many guys that have to leave. And quite frankly, in order to bring in another attacker, I think more than one would have to go. Maybe because of Gabriel Jesus' injury, that might change things. But like, if Gabriel Jesus were to come back in the next 2 to 3 weeks, then I would still feel like more than one attacker would need to go in order to bring him in. There's just a lot of guys in the team. Ash says Ramsdale would go for 40 million minimum, probably 50 exactly. So it's not like the end of the world. That's a ways away. We wouldn't be selling Ramsdale like now. But Ramsdale I think he's a good goalkeeper. I still think there's things that I felt about him from the beginning that have not changed. Concentration, near post, things like that, not organizing his back line. I think in his first season, the first season when him and Odegaard and Ben White came in, I thought we cared about defending so much more. That season we gave up, I think, less goals, if I'm correct, or I thought we were just better defensively. I'll actually look it up now. But I just felt like we took a lot more pride in defending. I thought Aaron Ramsdale was a lot more reliable in terms of his saves in that first season. And maybe it was because Bernd Leno was there. Once the next season kind of rolled around, it was kind of like, okay, like some of those things that you were doing before aren't necessarily showing up the same. So yeah, let's go to 21-22, which would be their first season, I think. Yeah. Goals against was 48. So it might be, actually, I think we did give up more goals. But if you also remember, we gave up a lot of goals in those, like, at the end of the season and at the very beginning. With Manchester City and Liverpool. I think we played right off the bat or something like that. But I just feel like defensively this last season we weren't great, and we gave up a lot of really soft goals. And I can think of a couple where I thought, oof, Ramsdale could have probably done better there. Now there's the flip side of the coin where it's like, where would we have been if he didn't make some of the saves that he made towards the end of the season? Will we have fallen even further? So I want to think about it holistically. I do have concerns about Ramsdale that have been there since the beginning, but I'm also not going to sit here and act like he hasn't saved our asses a lot of times as well. So yeah, Jack London says the Raya signing is a masterstroke. 25 to 27 million will do it. Amazing considering Spurs offered 25 million plus add-ons, so much better than error prone Onana at half the price. I don't know. I like I don't want to talk too much smack about Onana just yet. Um, not just yet. I think he's really good with his feet, but he has a howler in him as well. But most goalkeepers do. So but what I will say is I think in terms of what you said first, like Spurs offering 25 million plus add-ons and being rejected, but that's kind of like the beauty of waiting till the end of the window as well. Like you wait to the end of the window and then people are a lot more desperate, especially because Raya only has one more year left on his deal. And Brentford have already replaced him. So Spurs replaced him or went after somebody else, some unknown goalkeeper. Brentford already replaced Raya, so they're in a situation where now he wants to go to a certain club, and this club is willing to offer a certain amount, and so now we get a deal, which is nice. Um, Kai says these are players now in the final year of their contract: Runnerson, Aquanco, Holding, Cedric, Jorginho, El Neni, and Pepe. Pepe's contract will be um, uh, torn up. Um, Holding is not getting any playing time, which I think is very significant. That means he's probably going to go, and we want him to find somewhere else to be. Cedric probably have to cancel his contract as well because nobody is going to buy him with the wages that he's on. Jorginho will stay. El Neni will just be some guy around the squad. Like I just don't think anything's going to happen with him, and we'll probably cancel Runnerson's contract as well. Let's see what else. Um, Munini says, haha, people are already losing faith in our £100 million signing after 45 minutes, Arsenal fans or something else. It's the game. It's the constant ever like anxiety around something. If it's not perfect, the minute that we see it's a failure. Oh my gosh, we've been swindled, we've been this, we've been that. And yeah, £100 million signing, I think, people expect him to change our fortunes and things like that. But when you think about Rice, and how far of a jump in terms of learning the way that we play is, like Kai Havertz and Timber are going to take a lot less time to figure out how we play than Rice. Rice could not be in a more different, situation like coming into Arsenal, like a very pragmatic system, both for club and country, never really played anything like the way that we play. So he's going to take some time, especially because like the first time that he played for us, he played in the DM role. And then in the second time they played for us, he played in the 8 role. So I actually think, Rice might take a little while to kind of like get going, but he also has to like get up to speed with the level of intensity that we play at and also whatever injury that he has. Like it's just going to take a minute, but I'm not worried. Like when I went back and watched the game over because I was at the Monaco game. When I went and watched it back, he was actually a lot better than I thought when I was actually at the game, but I had missed so much of the first half that it was just like, you know, but he was actually a lot better than I thought. Um, and I thought him and Martinelli had a nice little thing going over on that side. I just think like he has to learn his positioning, positional discipline, not jumping out of his hole too early and leaving us exposed and things like that. But I'm not that worried about it. I'm surprised that people are already calling him like a flop and being like we have to now go buy another 8 because we have bought left 8. It's gone. It's done. Like I really wish people would move on. Paul says, I agree with Jess. Agree, Jess. Written off Rice already is unbalanced. It just makes no sense to me. It's been 5 minutes, like it really has. And if you've watched our preseason, most players have had glimpses of something positive, but there hasn't been anything really concrete because we've been chopping and changing, moving guys around. People have been playing different positions. Nothing has been set in stone. Nothing has been like we haven't played the same lineup multiple times in a row. And so you have to take that all into consideration. I don't think anybody has looked particularly sparkly in preseason. So why would you think our new signings would? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, everybody has been a little, besides Saliba and Saka and Jorginho, Trossard, those are the only players I can say probably look good the whole time, the entire time, like in preseason. From minute one, they look good. Like, that's probably it. So yeah, there's 300 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. I must medicate myself with a little bit of caffeine. I have not so far today, and I'm feeling it. Woo! Oh my gosh. You know, I'm not trying to blame him or anything, but like only you can make your coffee like you know? But yeah. um, yeah. Legend says Raya in now, Tony in January. The title is ours. People keep talking about Tony. I don't know why. World Boss says, let's hit the likes for Jess. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let's see what else you guys are saying. I did say Trossard. I did say him. Let's see. People are saying Thomas Partey was looking good. Thomas Partey was looking good. Yeah. So yeah, if you guys are just joining, Brentford are going to turn down our initial offer for David Raya. That was 20 million pounds plus three and add-ons. But everybody is working together to get the deal done, and the finer details are being sorted out. Again, like the season starts in like 5 minutes, so I think both teams are going to be like hard pressed to get this done. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it was done on Monday, because you want Raya to be in, you want everything to be kind of like sorted, and you want Matt Turner to go the other direction. So yeah, like I like this deal. I like the goalkeeper, and especially like what he can do with his feet. I think one of the things that's so important for Arsenal is to have reliable distribution from the back. And one thing about Ramsdale that I have seen um, kind of more often than I would like is kind of uneven distribution. Sometimes when he's on, there's nobody better. When he's off, you might as well have Bern Leno back there. And so I don't know if that's like because he doesn't have enough competition and he feels a little bit complacent or whatever. But Raya is somebody that I think consistently performs really well with the ball at his feet. Now, in terms of like save percentages and stuff like that, I think it's difficult because when teams are facing more shots, the goalkeeper, if they have a good goalkeeper, they tend to look a little bit better in shot percentages and things like that. But I think ultimately what you look at when you boil it down is Ramsdale should probably be saving a little bit more than what he is saving, and Raya is saving more than what he should be saving, meaning he's performing better. And so that's what I saw from last season. And to be honest, like I have a hard time looking at goalkeeper statistics and really because it's so difficult because you have to really read between the lines with those ones. Um it's so different than like outfield players. But I watched a really good video from a different knock. I think his name is like Alex that does the videos. He did one for Raya versus Ramsdale that made it so much easier to understand. And basically what it boiled down to was Ramsdale is saving less than he should, and Raya is saving more than he should, which from a goalkeeper standpoint would mean that Raya is doing a better job um, from a save percentage. And then in terms of like distribution, you don't get much better than Raya. I'm not saying he's Ederson or Allison, but he's up there, and he was probably the third or fourth best goalkeeper in the league last season. So yeah, there's definitely that. Milan says, I've been on a plane from Chicago to Vienna and back twice a year. Jet lag is real. They had heavy legs against Monaco. Yeah, from my perspective, like we don't actually know what happens before they play these games. Sometimes they have sessions before. So I'm trying not to get too wrapped up in like, oh my gosh, they didn't look perfect. What I will say is that we looked really comfy and very good when we played closer to our starting 11, and that the only time that we saw close to our starting 11 all together in on one pitch was against Barcelona, you know. So yeah. Michael says a different knock is such a good channel collab when. I don't know. I haven't talked to Alex about collabing or anything. I sit back and watch his videos. I think they're very, very good, very insightful, funny, so it's a channel that I endorse very, very much. Let's see. Ash says it's hilarious how unfit Rice is, bros. Breathing heavy like a dog. I've seen people say that so many times. It's so funny. Is that he's breathing heavy like a dog. It reminds you guys are probably saying that from like that one clip. It's one of my favorite clips online. Like the first time I saw it, I watched it like probably 20 times. It's like the guy that's like dribbling in between the cones, and the guy watches him and he's like, no, 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 you can never make it. You can never make it. You will never make it. You're breathing heavy like a dog. Think about your life. You are a failure. You are a failure. You can never make it. Sorry, it's so funny, but that's what it is, right? That's what it is, right? And every time somebody says he was breathing heavy like a dog, that's what I think. Arteta needs to run him a little bit more. Olu says immediately, you all are writing Ramsdale off because of a player who is not in or played in our system at all. We indeed are the most delusional fan base as well. I think the only difference between this one and like a normal scenario, Olu, is just because of the amount that you're paying for Raya, the fact that we wanted Raya before we wanted Ramsdale, the connection to the goalkeeper coach, and like the historical like trend of like only having one number one goalkeeper. I think that's what's really leading people into that alleyway of like Ramsdale is going to get replaced. We don't know for sure. But I think a lot of that has more to do with like not shiny toy syndrome, but more like there's just never really been a situation where you have two number one goalkeepers and they're just chilling. Like it just doesn't happen, you know? So, but at the same time, like I do think you're right about just completely writing him off. But also there's been a lot of criticism around Ramsdale lately, especially like during preseason. Um, After the Bruno Fernandes goal, there's a lot of criticism. People really criticized him for the Rafinha free kick that went in. And so I think it's just confirmation bias, like you not feeling convinced by Ramsdale, and then the David Raya links coming confirms that you were right about Ramsdale not being good enough, you know? So not necessarily me, but like I see why people are doing that. So yeah. Nashville says he can talk about whatever he wants. Terrible take. Systems Matter says Saka's not injured. Stop lying. No, Saka's not injured. He was ill. He was ill against Monaco, so I would expect him to play against City. Errol Graham says breaking. Breaking. Nottingham Forest are targeting two players from Arsenal. Just who are the two? Matt Turner and Marquinhos, I think it is. Which, you know, I wouldn't mind selling Marquinhos at this juncture. I don't want to be that person, but like, let's just be shady for a minute. The first time I seen Marquinhos like compilation, I was like, damn, like not in a good way either, because if your comps don't look good, it's not looking good for you. And I thought he looked average as hell in those comps. So, but in terms of like Marquinhos, I never imagined him being a big part of the team. I think early, like the early reporting on it was that he was kind of used as a make weight for creating like a relationship between, Sao Paulo, wherever he came from, and Arsenal. And so I never expected him to play a big role. I always felt like he would get loaned out and then eventually sold. But yeah, I wouldn't mind moving him on. No offense to little Marquinhos, but yeah, there you go. Davidson says, nope, a footballer should stick to football and talk about football. Don't push whatever. Oh, you guys are talking about the Ramsdale thing. I did really like his Players Tribune. I thought, these are things that I think about all the time, though. Like, I think football fans have a very difficult time accepting players as human. And, so anytime a player speaks about the human side of who they are, they're told to just shut up. I don't want to hear about it. you're a robot and I just need you to perform. I don't want to hear about, you going through trials and tribulations and very difficult things. And I think it's important for fans to hear, because it's like we want to know more things about a player's life. We want to know who they're dating, what they're buying, where they're going, where they're eating, who they're friends with, what do they do. But as soon as they talk about something that could potentially affect how they play on the pitch, we're like, I don't want to hear about that though. So I like that, that player's tribune. I thought Ramsdale had his usual humorous self as well. Like, I really like that about Ramsdale. He seems like a very fun person that doesn't take himself too serious, but he talked about serious things as well, and he came across very well. And I just feel like football fans have a very difficult time accepting that players are human. And the more that we learn about players, some people just really are like, I don't want to hear about that, you know. Um, that's not to say that, Ramsdale shouldn't be performing well, but I think it's not so much about not expecting them to perform. I think it's how we view them and how we react to them not performing well. Do you know what I mean? Um, we should have the expectation that they should perform at a high level every single day. But how we react to them not playing well, I think, is where I start to be like the abuse, and there's a fine line between criticism and abuse. I think sometimes we go too far where any sort of criticism of a player is immediately shut down. You can't even say somebody had a bad game or should have done better. But when you start telling people that, you want to kill their family, their kids, you start to really go in on them. I think that's where fans need to think like players are going through shit. So maybe I should like reel my emotions in. And so I liked it. I love Ramsdale. Like, I do. Like, I think I almost maybe defend him too much. Um Potentially, like, he's somebody that I do feel like I defend a little bit too much, because I just like him, but yeah, players are human, so there's that. Um let's see. Davidson says Michael Kwashi, because I don't like football pushing what the powers. So the whole thing is like, if he wants to, talk about something that's important to him, you don't have to feel offended by it, I don't think. I think we have a very hard time accepting that people have views on things that maybe we don't accept. And instead of just saying, you know what, that's just not something that I like, and we have to be like very vocal and upset and irate about people not believing the same things as us. And globally, like, we're not all going to agree on things. I know that, like, this may be like kind of like a sensitive subject. I don't want to go too far into it, but I know religiously some people just don't really believe in LGBT stuff, and all that kind of thing. And like, yeah, I think you can accept that some religious beliefs don't agree with that kind of stuff. And then on the other side, I think they should understand that like Western society does. And so we can all coexist without having to try to impose our ways on other people. It's just such a difficult balance, you know. But Ramsdale can speak about whatever he wants to speak about. He's not trying to influence anybody. I don't think he's trying to like push any sort of agenda or anything like that. Um, he should be allowed to speak on the things that he wants to speak on. It's just strange. It's strange. Amon says, even Pep confirmed Rice chose us over City. Our poll is actually unmatched. Yeah, Pep was talking about, Rice and saying what a great player he is, important for Arsenal, important for England as well. And he did just choose us. Like, we all knew that, you know? Um, so yeah. Um, Carl says, bro is speaking up for his brother. Dude, chill. It's not an agenda. Exactly. Like, it's just not, it wasn't an agenda. It wasn't something that I felt like he was pushing. Like, let's just get over it, It's to be irate about that, like, sound is a little weird. So yeah. Um John says, I'm having a feeling that our battle with Man City is more psychological than anything. And somebody asked, like, earlier, whether or not I felt confident that we were going to beat City. And my answer is no. No, I actually am having a hard time like getting really excited about this game just because we haven't really seen our best 11 play that much. I don't know what our best 11 truly is. Um, and so I'm having a difficult time, really getting excited, because it is City, so you kind of expect the worst, especially with like our history. Um, and like we just haven't truly clicked in this preseason the way that we did in the last preseason. So yeah. Um, yeah. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Don one says City never show up for the charity shield, but they will this time. Don, they will this time. This will be the time that they show up. And I don't even think they have to really show up that well. I think my biggest concern is defensively. I don't think we look any better than we did last season. That's my main one. Nashville says, how much training would they have to do to have no interest or opinions on anything going on in the world? It's just weird, you know. The thing is like, Zinchenko said things that people didn't like. I can understand why certain people didn't love what he said, but for people to act like Zinchenko should not have any sort of emotional reaction to his home country being under siege, like, is wild to me. Like, you know what I mean? So when we start talking about global matters and things like that, I think people have a very hard time looking at both sides. And, I just feel like, that's why the world is the way that it is. We can't see both sides. Like, if your religion doesn't accept homosexuality and things like that, I can understand that because it's not my religion. And so who am I to tell you that your religion is not real, or, that's what you shouldn't believe that and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I do feel like those religious, beliefs also should not be trying to push against Western culture for accepting LGBTQIA, it's I don't know why we can't coexist and not have to be like, well, because I believe this, you should believe it as well. Weird. Weird. Um, so yeah, but either way, I am excited about Raya potentially coming in. I'm just gonna make sure there's nothing else that's really broke today. Um, People are asking, is the community shield a real trophy or not? And if we win it, yes. If we don't, no. That's my answer. Of course. Of course. Um, um, yeah, nothing really else has come out. But in terms of like other signings and things like that, I know that people are like, are we going to bring anybody else in? We kind of spoken about this before, but if you look at how many players we have in the team, there just needs to be some more outgoings before we even imagine other players coming in, especially like forward players and things like that. Like, guys have got to go. We have so much deadwood, and Pepe should be gone soon. Maybe Marquinhos is gone too. Um, you know, but those are kind of like the only players that seem to be having some interest, so we'll see how things unfold. Now it'll be interesting to see like, what happens with like Tierney and Thomas Partey. Seeing that Juventus are interested in Thomas Partey, for me, doesn't mean anything because they'll never be able to spend the money necessary to bring in Thomas Partey. They're never going to table a 40 million pound offer. It's just not happening, right? Um, but as time goes on, I think the likelihood of either one of them leaving, in particular Thomas Partey, becomes even smaller because you have to make sure that your squad has the necessarily the only way to move Thomas Partey on is if you can find an adequate replacement. And at this juncture, I just don't see that player. So I think it's the slim possibility that Thomas Partey could leave. Because one, it would have to be Saudi Arabia coming in with a big bid, and we would have to be able to go out and find somebody to replace in the squad. And if you can't get Chouameni, you can't get Lavia, you can't get Caicedo, then it's not happening. right? With Tierney, it's a little bit different because I don't think 100% you have to replace him in the squad, but he's played so well in preseason that, you know, I think he really looks like a player that wants to stay. And quite frankly, like Newcastle have spent a lot of money, and if their last thing is to come up to Arsenal and offer 20 million for Tierney, they can go on as far as I'm concerned. So then you have Balogun as well, you know, so um we'll see how the outgoings go, but right now they're going as they usually go. Slow. Slow. Jordan Hill says, "Morning, Jess. Do you really think it's necessary to get another keeper? We already have Turner as a backup." Turner is going, Jordan. That's a part of the reason why we're even looking at Raya. Matt Turner was subject of some interest from Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are pushing forward um, to buy Matt Turner. I'll show it to you now so you can see it. So yeah, Nottingham Forest have submitted an official bid for Matt Turner. The proposal has been made for a permanent transfer, and talks are advancing with Arsenal. Crucial step in goalkeepers domino as Arsenal keep negotiating with Brentford for David Raya, and the deal is getting closer. So Matt Turner is leaving, and so Arsenal need to find another goalkeeper. And a really good market opportunity has come about with Bayern Munich failing to be able to bring in David Raya, and since then we have open talks, and so that's kind of what's happening. But I would suspect that if nobody was really interested in Matt Turner, we would not be in for David Raya. Those are my feelings. Nashville says, yeah, Turner is getting sold. Let's see. What else are you guys saying? Nashville says KT can fit in the squad if we are inverting from right back. I think he's looked really good in preseason, to be honest, Kieran Tierney. And so if he stayed, I'd be happy. But if somebody put in a 30 to 40 million pound bid, which I think is unlikely, I think we need to look at it. It's the balance of it, you know, but I think he's looked really good. And to be honest, going into preseason, I would say Tomiyasu was ahead of him. I would say leaving preseason, Tierney for me has jumped him in the pecking order in my mind. I think he's looked fresher. I think he's looked better on the ball. I think he looks hungry, physically up to the task, and so yeah, I'm loving what I've seen from Tierney for sure. Lucas says 35 million for Livermento after a knee injury is a lot. And the funny thing about, you know, Newcastle is I heard that one of their concerns about spending so much on Kieran Tierney was his injury history. And I was like, but you're buying somebody that is, you know, hasn't really played off of the back of his ACL, but you're willing to spend almost 40 million on that guy. I just don't think they want to give us the money, which is the case with a lot of clubs. So Newcastle can suck it as far as I'm concerned. Bye. Um, bye. Now, just kind of speaking a little bit on Balogun, because some of you guys were like asking what's going on with that. With Balogun, like it looks like Inter are really pushing forward with Scamacca. So I think actually Fabrizio Romano might have talked about it earlier. Did I miss it? No. Yeah, here it is. Atalanta are trying to hijack Inter's move for Scamacca. West Ham are not happy with 24 million euros plus add-ons been made by Inter today. Inter remain on their position. West Ham are expect Atalanta to send an important proposal bigger than Inter's one race on. So now West Ham have a little bit of a bidding war going on for Scamacca. So one of two things can happen. You know, Inter can lose out on Scamacca and they end up turning their attention back to Balogun, or Scamacca ends up going either place, you know, either place that he goes, and then West Ham come in for Balogun. The new kind of like rumors coming out is that West Ham will want to be involved in the race for Balogun if he's on the market, which he is. So I actually think we're in a position now where we'll see more Premier League clubs being interested in Balogun. That's the only way that we're going to get the fee that we want, which is closer to like 40 million. So that's kind of where we're at with Balogun, but I still anticipate him leaving 100%. And I think he might end up at a Premier League club, maybe even West Ham. So we'll see. Carl says West Ham would ruin Balogun. To be honest, like, you know, as long as they pay a good fee and we have like a sell on and a buyback, I think we're in a good position. West Ham, it depends on what they do. Like just keeping a little bit of an eye out on what's been going on with them. They brought in that new sporting director that's supposed to be really good, and they're not taking his recommendations. They are actively having like a lot of conflict between their new sporting director that wants to go in a different direction and David Moyes being desperate to bring in McTominay and Maguire and James Ward-Prowse. And so it's taking a long time for them to kind of like get things together. But like if that sporting director is saying for them to bring in that Fofana kid, that's who they should be bringing in, because that Fofana guy was really good against us and he would cost less than McTominay or uh, James Ward-Prowse, and he's probably better. And so, they're struggling. And so I wonder what side Balogun sits on. Is he on the David Moyes side or is he on the new sporting director's side? It depends. But yeah, they're having a lot of issues, and yeah. John says Balogun doesn't want to play for the Arsenal. It's so evident by now. I agree. Nashville says, I mean, I would rather him go to Villa or Brighton, but West Ham is a decent fit. Yeah, the only problem with West Ham is that, you do want, the situation, I guess, for the player to do well so that, if you have a buyback or a sell on for him, like especially like a sell on clause, like you want a player that I think is in a good place where he can showcase himself. Like, let's say if he goes to like Aston Villa or Brighton, chances are you're not going to get relegated. You're going to look good. You're going to be in a system that makes you look better. And so, when a next team comes in and wants to buy him, that fee will probably be bigger. Where if they get relegated at West Ham, then whatever the sell on clause is, like you'll get a lot less because you'll be selling for less and probably he will look worse. So yeah, I get that part, but at the same time, the fee is so important to me, for sure. Don Juan says if Balogun was that good, Arteta would be fighting to keep him. And I think Arteta and Edu spend a lot of time, looking at the attitude of the player. And I'm not saying Balogun has a bad attitude, but what I will say is that I don't think he has any sort of like hunger or desperation to be at Arsenal. And one of the things that they consistently spoke about is that they want players that are desperate to be at Arsenal. Rice, Havertz, Timber, Raya, all desperate to be at Arsenal. Balogun couldn't be asked, does not care. So I think that's a big part of it more than anything, is that like if you're indifferent about Arsenal, we should be indifferent about you. And that's just the truth. Yo-Yo says Saudi window closes after Europe, so perhaps some of the dregs of our squad will be here in September. Fair enough. Do you see any Saudi clubs coming in for any of our players, though? I have a hard time seeing them being interested in anybody. Just looking at how they've recruited, we don't necessarily have the types of profile of players. Like I would say Thomas Partey is probably the only one that fits that criteria of like, is kind of like a big enough name, played in Europe, things like that, of an older age. Like they're not gonna look at a Holding, you know? They're just not. They're just not. Let's see. Sugar says, we should have a clause whereby West Ham then can't sell him onto another Premier League team. I think you'll have a hard time getting a clause like that in there. And I know what your fear is that if he goes to a West Ham and then he kills it and then he ends up at a Man United or a Chelsea or something like that, it'll bite us in the ass. I get where you're going with that, but I do think that the way things that are going, it'll be harder to put clauses like that in there because Premier League clubs know that Europe is broke. And so to put a clause like that in there really does cut off so many good opportunities for you to sell a player. And so I can't see that, like, if do you see what I'm saying with that? Like, because Premier League clubs are the only ones that can buy your players for top dollar. So West Ham would actually be ridiculous to accept anything like that, but I get where you're going with that because you don't want to see him at a Chelsea or Man United. But don't be surprised if you end up seeing Balogun at one of those clubs in the future. He looks like that type of player that would end up at one of our rivals at some point. Yo-Yo says Balogun perhaps due to becoming USA's number 9. That would be a coup. Good point. I mean, if they're willing to go for Osimhen, on a lower scale, maybe they would look at somebody like Balogun. So I see what you're saying. James says El Neni would also suit the Saudi league. He would suit the Saudi league. But I still think that El Neni is at a very kind of like lower profile, look at the players that they've went for. A lot of those players are pretty high profile. Boy says, if you man want Balogun out, then just accept that he's at one of our rivals in 3 years' time. Exactly. That's kind of where I'm at with it as well. He will end up at one of our rivals for sure. Davidson says, we sold Andy Cole. A lot of our fans here seem not knowledgeable. He was a massive goal scorer. We let go early. Balogun will be the same. The thing is though, you can't keep everybody. And I think even though you're saying fans are not knowledgeable, I also think that the idea that you can keep absolutely everybody and you should hoard all the talent because you're afraid that they'll end up somewhere else is just nonsense. I think players sometimes just don't stay. And in that time, if you have Thierry Henry, you have, Anelka is coming through, you have other players that end up being amazing, then you don't give a shit, and I think that what happens is the only time that you really feel some type of way about letting a player go is if you don't replace and you're not doing well. And so as long as Arsenal are doing well, I don't think it really is going to hurt us that bad. But, if we're doing poorly, then it will, if that makes sense. And I still think Arsenal are gearing up to bring in a really big number 9 signing next summer. And so if Balogun ends up somewhere else, but we end up with, an Osimhen or Evan Ferguson or something like that, then why would you care? I think the whole idea that like, oh my God, if a player goes somewhere else and kills it, we've just made just a horrendous mistake, takes away all the context around who we had in the team at the time, who we brought in to replace those players, and if we were successful in those times. And I think a lot of the players that we've let go in this short period of time, it's been very few and far between that have done very good. I remember people having an absolute meltdown over Guendouzi. Nobody talks about him anymore. What about Guendouzi? Nobody talks about him anymore. Letting go of Aubameyang, he did well at Barcelona for a couple of months, came to England, career done. Even Martinez to a certain extent, I think, he's still a really, really good goalkeeper. But I don't think last season anybody was like, yeah, that Martinez should have kept him. Like, I think the idea that if we sell a player and they end up smashing it, we've made some huge mistake is a little bit like disingenuous to me. So yeah. Let's see. Don One says, I've watched all of Balogun's goals last year, all tap-ins, and bad goalkeeping. Nothing special from Balogun. Even Laka scored 27 in that terrible league. James says a young Andy Cole was let go because he had no chance of taking Ian Wright's place in the team. The same with Balogun. He just isn't ready for Arsenal. You can't keep everyone. When you have a team the thing is more of your players come through the academy and play in your team when you're doing poorly. When you're doing well, less and less make it through. And I think this idea of like, because Saka's done so well and Emile Smith-Rowe broke through and we have Martinelli in the team, that like anybody that shows any signs of being decent, we should be keeping. The better you are, the less of your academy players should make it. And players serve the first team in multiple ways. I'm looking at Balogun. I don't think I'm seeing like, the second coming of Harry Kane, like some other people are trying to make it out to seem. So yeah, says, Bayern, please take Kane. We can get rid of the occasional North London derby penalty. But what about when we get them in the Champions League and he knocks us out anyway? What about that, O'Malley says, only player who was done well is maybe Willock. Oh yeah, Willock. But compared to Odegaard, the sell clearly improved us drastically. And like, that's the thing. It's like, it only really, I think, hurts you if, you didn't replace well or you're doing poorly or something like that. I think context is super key. Nelson says all of the top clubs in England have strikers now that will be there for the next 3 years. So if we add a buyback, we can still get him back if he does well, because none will go for Balogun. I hear what you're saying. Let's see. Aha says, can we not put a buyback clause on Balogun if we sell him? Yes, we can. Smart Cookie says, what genuine links are there with Ferguson? I haven't read them. The links are coming from my head, Smart Cookie. There's no legitimate, but I'm just making it up in my head, because that's probably the striker that I would want if we can't get Osimhen. That's where I'm at. Kevino Latino says, remember the outrage for that youth that went to Chelsea? Dude has been on nothing but loans. I think the track record for this regime has been pretty good on who we should keep and who we should let go. It was kind of embarrassing seeing people crying about Willock at the end of last season. They were like, "Oh my God, Willock, he's doing so good, and look at us, we're struggling, we're doing this." I didn't hear anybody saying we should buy Willock back this summer. It was all just, "Oh my God," like all this stuff, and it's just like nonsense to me. It just is. Let's see. Uh, John says 87 goals last season with what we've got. Let's focus on other positions. Yeah, people are like, oh, well, we have a goal scoring problem. We don't. We score loads of goals. And people that are Davidson saying Ferguson for Arsenal instead of Balogun, I'm out. The reason why I would prefer Ferguson over Balogun is Balogun doesn't give us any variation in terms of the strikers. Like, he doesn't give us any height, he doesn't give us any physicality in the box, he doesn't give us anything like that. And so to go and have another striker that's probably 5'9" doesn't make any sense. All of them are the same height, like Jesus, Balogun, Eddie. So yeah, Evan Ferguson for me, who also has been already playing in the Premier League, he's probably going to be better than Balogun. I would actually probably put money on it now. He has the physical profile that people pay big money for. And so he will go for big money from Brighton, where Balogun will probably go for smaller money, because the physical profile of a striker at this point really matters. Everybody wants a Holland type striker in their team at some point. Evan Ferguson will give you that, the physicality, athleticism, speed, and all of that. Osimhen would give you that. Balogun doesn't give you that. So yeah, Ferguson for Arsenal instead of Balogun does make sense. There's nothing about Balogun that says to me that he's going to be any sort of Holland, Kane, regen, or anything like that. He's just a good player. Like, that's just about it. Don One says, I don't even think Tony would improve us. We need to wait on Osimhen to become available. I agree. I think we need to go big. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. But yeah, this has been an hour long, and some of you guys are kind of creeping into the conversation that I want to have later on today, which is about wrapping up preseason. What do we think? Are we worried? Are we scared? What's going on? So that's kind of what I want to do a little bit later. That's going to be in about 3 hours, 3.5 hours time, like 5:45. So come back then, and we will talk about preseason, go through all the games, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we're worried about, what we're excited about, and all of that. There's 319 of you guys in here, so make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. If anything else happens in terms of transfers, you guys know I'll be here. But until next time, love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye, y'all.